Hey guys, welcome to Write Bites, an audio series where we discuss writing, marketing, and freelancing during one of my daily walks around the neighborhood. As you can see, I am not walking around the neighborhood because it is still a bit smoky and I'm not quite ready to resume my walks, waiting for the air quality to get just a bit better. So today I am recording this in the office, and the topic I want to discuss today is the freelance business model and why it is so lucrative, why it is such a superior option that has completely changed the landscape of clients and business owners alike over the last 10 years relative to the previous model. And I wanted to dive into this because I noticed that a lot of questions that come up on freelancing and more specifically freelance writing really stem from people not understanding how businesses work in the first place and the advantages that freelancing provides if you are approaching it correctly. So, to kind of go back to the beginning, let's talk about how businesses would work before the internet kind of changed things and made people more accessible. So, when we talk about, let's continue with the writing business model, kind of talk about what the previous version of a writing business looked like, because it's going to apply to many other business models as well. But the direct comparison, I think, will make it a little bit easier to wrap your head around it. So previously, if you wanted to offer writing as a service, what did you do? You went and got hired by a writing firm or some sort of firm that heavily utilized writers. So kind of the traditional idea of like the Mad Men style advertising firm where most of the people are, either falling in the category of the visual creative or the copywriter. And the same was true for pretty much any other form of, direct sales writing, freelance style writing, copywriting that was going to be used in the business sense. If you wanted to work on projects like that, you went and got hired by a firm. That's what you did. And then that firm, why did the firm have the writing jobs to offer? Why were they the only game in town? Because they were the ones who were out selling this service to other businesses. So when you got into a firm, there were people in that firm hired, either full time who were out there. There's a full time sales team at work. Often, depending on how the firm was arranged, you might have kind of the upper level copywriting partners who worked their way through the firm. They then become, the leads on going out and securing business by connecting with other people who are at the top of their firms and saying, hey, we're gonna go, have a $500 meal together, and then at the end, you give your firm's business to my firm, and we do the work for you. So that's basically how it worked, and there was different scales of that. You had smaller firms, you had bigger firms, you had firms in between, but that's kind of how it worked. You had a sales department that secured the business, or upper level partners, upper level executives who are kind of the ones networking with executives from other companies to secure some of those bigger contracts, and that's how it worked. That was kind of the only game in town. So, from now, more importantly, let's look at how that worked from the side of someone who needs copywriting for their business. So let's say I am the business owner of a let's use an Ogilvy example. I'm selling a cleaning product that helps people to clean their carpets, clean their clothes, whatever. It helps get stains out, a stain remover. So I want to get this product out and in front of people. I want to do a creative that's going to generate demand for my product. So in kind of the pre-internet era, in order to do that, you would then go talk with a firm, an advertising firm, and say, hey, this is what I want to do. I'm looking to give my business to someone for advertising, and then you're paying a very high rate to this firm to secure their services. Now, what's actually happening when you go hire that firm and pay this big fat salary? In most cases, what's happening is that money is basically being distributed across multiple layers of the firm's costs. You have the amount that's going to the partner that you contacted, or the sales exec that you contacted to get their business. They get their sales commission, and then you have amounts of that are being taken out to pay administrative costs, advertising costs on the part of the firm that are trying to get in front of you to make you think of their name when you're ready to hire an advertising company. All these costs in there, big expensive costs of running a firm. A lot of these firms are located in downtown Manhattan. Got these massive real estate rent bills, costs everywhere. And at the end of the day, who's actually writing your campaign? It's probably a lower level copywriter who's making, if we're talking about today's salaries, maybe making, 50, 60K a year if they're living in New York where it's more expensive. If they have a branch that they send it out to that's in, Nebraska, then maybe that copywriter is making, 40K a year. So at the end of the day, you're having this in many cases, if you're not really paying up for the VIP package, you got a low-level, entry-level copywriter, someone who's maybe been doing it for 2-3 years, who's actually doing the writing for your campaign, but you're paying this massive paycheck to this firm that's really just about covering that firm's expenses and all the people that they need to pay. So we switch over to, well, first of all, that makes it, the cost so prohibitive that most companies actually can't afford to work with these types of companies. So most companies weren't actually participating in these big national advertising campaigns. Maybe instead they're paying a much lower rate to the local radio station to do a quick little ad. But even then, to get the writing for the ad, maybe they're paying the radio station to write the ad for them, or they're hiring a smaller local advertising or writing firm. Again, with the same margins being taken out, just at a smaller scale. So you're just basically, the cost of what you were paying to be participating in advertising, to get any form of writing for your business, were magnified, were unnecessarily large. And so what the internet did is it now made it easy for people to start reaching out and connecting to all sorts of talent without all the gatekeeping, without needing to go through, 20 years ago, if you wanted to find a copywriter, where were you going to find the copywriter? Pretty much only through these copywriting firms. You couldn't just go out and find a copywriter somewhere because there weren't enough people, trying to go find these people. It wasn't easy enough to find them for there to be enough freelance demand for people to be able to sit around and find this type of work. The only option for the copywriters was to go through the firms. The only option for the business owners was to go through the firms. So then we get to the internet, and what I said, it starts allowing for more direct connection. And suddenly, the avenues for people to go find and utilize talent became much more direct. And as it started to become a little more normal for people to reach out and try to find talent directly, then you started having, the talent start to become normal for them to go reach out to companies and try to, offer their services directly. And what does that mean for businesses today? Why would they rather go through a freelancer than a firm? Well, the answer is that when you're comparing a firm versus the freelancer, instead of paying $50,000 for a second year copywriter to do your work for you, mostly because 45,000 of that is going to the company and only about 5,000 of that actually makes it into the writer's salary, you can go hire a second year freelancer and just pay the $5,000. So you're getting essentially the same work for $45,000 less. And those are just arbitrary numbers, but it's when we talk about scale, it really is that big of a difference. And it's the same kind of concept for when companies, when especially in recessions or uncertain economic times, when companies are evaluating writing needs and how to supply them, the cost to hire a freelancer is drastically lower than to have a full-time staff assigned to that writing. And even when we talk about a full-time staff who maybe ultimately is making less than the freelancer is making, people really underestimate the cost of hiring, finding, hiring, and maintaining a full-time staff member. So even if we're talking about someone who has a relatively low salary versus a highly paid freelancer, at the end of the day, the costs usually end up being less to pay the really high cost freelancer compared to having the full time staff on board. And if you can get the writer, if their productivity and talent, if you can nurture it to a certain point, eventually it does become the better play in the long term. The more work you have for them, but when we're talking about the short term, 6 months to a year, it's almost always going to be cheaper to work with a freelancer. And so that's why we actually see demand for freelance writers go up during recessions and uncertain economic times, things of that nature. But anyway, I don't know if that was something that hopefully this was an enlightening discussion for you. I just wanted to kind of quickly go through the before and after, so you could really kind of get a feel for why it's so easy to provide a better value to companies as freelancers, and why the freelance writing market has just absolutely exploded due to the rise of internet-driven commerce, and particularly e-commerce in the last 10 years. 2010, the e-commerce sales were 170 billion in 2010. In 2019, they jumped up to 600 billion, and we're on pace to hit 1.2 trillion this year. So that's a 600% increase in 10 years. And that, this writing is these sales are almost all driven through copywriting. Copywriting is instrumental in literally every form of online sales campaign, today in 2020. And so, this explosive growth is, relying on this freelance writing talent. And to a certain extent, over the last few years, more and more of that was brought in-house. But you still have a lot of companies where they're not ready to bring it in-house, and over the next year or two, especially if we end up kind of going into somewhat of a sustained recession, or even a temporary recession, you're going to see more and more of companies that had started, putting their writing to full-timers now switching back over to freelance, because of the lower cost. So anyway, hope that was helpful, and I will catch you guys in the next episode.